Hello, comic creators. Welcome back to the Comics Experience Podcast, the podcast where we talk to you about the business and creative aspects of being a professional comic book creator. My name's Gamal. The gentleman next to me virtually is Andy, and we try to use Comics Experience, both this podcast and the community that we have built online, to teach people how to build sustainable comic book careers. One of the ways we try to do that is look at current events in the comic book industry and try to extract lessons from those events that you can use on an ongoing basis. So, with that said, we are going to talk about, we're going to talk about the issues surrounding and the practices surrounding dealing with comic book creators who suddenly find themselves, because of their own alleged behavior, in very difficult public relations, social, and legal situations. Just as a background, if you're not aware, Neil Gaiman, award-winning author of a lot of different stuff, has been accused by multiple women of very egregious rape. Let's just call it what it is. We will not go into the details of what those allegations are, but we will put the link to the original article in the show notes, just so you know. We're going to give you a trigger warning with that because it is difficult reading. But what I'd like to focus on is the idea that if you're working in comics and you're working in a team and you're not a cartoonist doing everything yourself, there is always a chance that you run into a situation where all of a sudden you open up your email and find out that one of the other creators is in some very hot water. Now, Andy, you are both a publisher and a writer. So as a publisher, I guess my question to you, this hypothetical question is, if all of a sudden you open up, Vulture magazine, and one of your premier writers has been accused of multiple different crimes, what is your response as a publisher?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I've had to think a lot about this. I have not been in this situation yet, but it is something that happens, unfortunately, with enough regularity that when I decided to go into publishing, I started having to think about that ahead of schedule. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
would I do? One of the ways that I thought about that ahead of schedule was with the contract, with our publishing agreements. And our publishing
Mm-hmm.
agreements have language that essentially says, if things like this are credible and come out publicly, we have the right to terminate this contract. We don't have to publish anything and blah, blah, blah. So it gives us, so from a contractual standpoint, it gives me coverage and a wide
Mm-hmm.
range of leeway to take action.
Right.
Some publishers I know have gotten caught in situations where their contracts don't have those sorts of escape valves.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're kind of contractually obligated. They can break their contract and then maybe get sued, or I mean, you can talk more to, what consequences are from that. But fortunately, we shouldn't find ourselves in a situation where our hands are essentially tied by a contract that we signed. So, because of that, what and I actually wrote out sort of the protocol, and obviously depending on the scope of the allegations and what they are,
Mm-hmm.
like things may adjust. But using the article about what Neil's been accused of, uh which is awful, um I would first put out a public statement
Mm-hmm.
just saying we're aware of the allegations and we're we're trying to figure out what appropriate actions to take. I would
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge say, say we don't condone that behavior, like bare minimum sort of like, but like I'd go ahead and say, yeah, I'm aware,
Hmm.
and give me a minute. And the reason I would
Hmm.
say give me a minute is because I would want to do some investigating, find
Right.
out what I can on my own. But more importantly, I would want to go to the rest of the creative team that is working on that comic. So let's say it's a writer and I've got a penciler, an inker, a colorist, and a letterer. I would email them, and maybe the writer too. Presumably, I would know who they are. So I would, I'd probably this email and be like, "Yeah, this is bad. These are the actions we're going to take, up
Hmm.
to and including, canceling the book." But I'd want to get ahead and speak with the other creators because essentially they become victims as well,
Right.
not to the extent of the people he actually,
Hmm.
assaulted, but or allegedly assaulted. But um, but I would want to get ahead of that, because I'd want them to know that I realize that they're, innocent of any
Hmm.
wrongdoing, and that the decision I make may not be great for them, but it was not made without consideration of them.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if there's anything that I can do, to make things easier for them, whether it's help them find other work or whatever it is, because it would be effective immediately. It'd be
Hmm.
like pencils down sort of thing. Um, I would try and do those things because what I would like to do is minimize the damage other to other folks. Once I'd get that straightened and I've had my communication with them and communication with anybody within the CEX organization, then I would make the public statement. In a case as seemingly egregious as this, I would not put that book out.
Okay.
I would cancel the book, and that would be my public statement is we're no longer going to do business with so and so, and we are canceling production on this thing. Which, talk about Fallout, two TV shows, I think, Good Omens, Dead Boy Detectives, and then Dark Horse has announced that they're not putting out the rest of Ansani
Nancy
Boy,
boys. Yeah.
Nancy Boys. Um, so like there's a lot of people. Like a television show employs a lot of people.
Hmm.
So like
Hundreds.
this allegation comes out, is terrible. It appears like action should be taken,
Hmm.
but then it creates it hurts more people as it goes along.
Yeah.
The fallout of it hurts more people. So, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds, like multiples of hundreds of people that just lost their jobs because this all came to light. Now, it needed to come to light.
Yes.
Like that's the right thing to do. And I think the right thing to do is pull the plug on these things. But I hope that it was done with some form of compassion or help to those that don't deserve this.
Okay. Well, I think because we're talking about the specific scenario that was in this situation, but I'd like to actually look at the alternative aspects of it. So
Okay.
let's say, for example, just as a hypothetical, it's not the writer, it's the letterer. Same accusations, same, you're in the middle of production of the book, allegations come out. Do you still pull the whole book or do you get another letter?
Okay. No, I'm glad you asked this because it's tricky, right? Because it
Mm-hmm.
it feels like the answer should be like, well, they did the same thing, the result should be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Except that anyone but the writer I could theoretically replace,
Right.
right? Or anybody else that is an owner of it, I can't replace,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if it's the letterer, they're usually not baked in as an owner.
Right.
And if I have the ability to pull the plug on their contract of lettering, I can eat the cost of what I paid them for whatever they've lettered so far, and I can hire a
Mm-hmm.
new letterer, and then I'm putting out a book that is free and clear of this. Um, but I would still do the same thing. We're aware of the allegations, talk to the
Hmm.
creative team, and then, like the steps taken would still go in that order.
Hmm.
And then but yeah, I mean you could potentially swallow that bill um and keep going. Also, the another big difference here is that in the case of Neil Gaiman, people are buying that book. Probably the single biggest reason people are buying that book is because Neil Gaiman's name is on it. So
Hmm.
they're like talking about more about the fallout is he has this giant fan base that is all affected by this. And by affected, I just don't just mean like they have fewer Neil Gaiman books to appreciate, but they like a lot of them felt very personally and very strongly, with goodwill towards him and they're also kind of suffering. It's
Hmm.
different.
Hmm.
It's different, but and theoretically, there aren't that many people buying books because of the letterer or even the
Right.
color artist, right?
Right. Right. Um, well, then the next, I guess, variation on the scenario is what if you're, because I think Anansi Boys got pulled at issue 7 and it was an 8 issue series. What if you're the publisher and you've already completed all 8 issues are already out in the world and then the allegations come out? So there's not a situation of pencils down because they're done. Everybody's walked away. The books are now in the market. What is the reaction or is the process different when the book is already completed and on the shelf?
So, I mean, the process would be different if like the individual issues are out, but a collected edition, like a hardcover or a trade hasn't
Right.
come out, then you need to have that as essentially the same conversation. Are we putting the
Mm-hmm.
trade and hardcover out? It's less about getting people paid for their immediate work and more about saying, sorry, you're not going to get the royalties that you should get
Mm-hmm.
on, and probably pretty decent royalties on a
Mm-hmm.
book like that with a creator as big as Neil. I don't know that there's a lot you could do about that. Like, I don't think a publisher would feel obligated to go, this is what we think your royalties were going to be, and we're just going to pay it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that would is likely to happen. As much as I don't want creators to get screwed, the publisher shouldn't really get screwed. Like everybody's getting screwed
Mm-hmm.
somehow. So, but yeah, if the book is already completed and the hardcovers and the trade paperbacks are out, and like you're really not doing anything, but the books are out in the world, then then I think it really comes down to a statement of we're no longer going to do anything new, but I mean they're out in the market. There's not a whole lot I can think of that a publisher can do.
Right.
The only other thing I can think of is say, doing something like, any money that we receive from the book that is ours to keep, we will donate to an organization like RAINN or something else, which
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe Dark Horse did do that. I can't remember.
I don't remember seeing it, but they may have done that.
Um, I can see doing that too, where you're like, I'm not willing to, take this giant loss on the cost of the print run and all that. Like that could be very damaging to
Mm-hmm.
to even a decent sized publisher. A print run theoretically of this size would be a huge loss to take and very painful. But saying, hey, if we recoup those costs, any money further than that we make from this book, we will donate to help victims and of similar sorts of attacks.
Okay. Now, I'm under the impression that if you're in the beginning of the process, you just got everybody signed to their contracts, you've got the production schedule set, the writer starts working on the script, then the allegations come out. It's a much easier, it's a much easier call and a much easier process because unless you've actually announced it in the trades that this book is coming out, you could just pull the plug on the whole thing.
Yeah, I did have a situation like that. I mean, it didn't have anything to do with violent allegations. Um, but we had something come out that was going to be a difficult PR situation,
Mhm.
and we were able to step back. And there, I had conversations with the creators, told them what was going on, what the issues were, and we tried to chart a path forward. And we basically disengaged from that contract. And
Mhm.
it was a painful couple of weeks, but it was manageable, and nobody got shorted money. And that book theoretically could go to another publisher, or they could self-publish it still, or what have you. And again, there was nothing about those creators that was like nothing like this. It was just a PR
Mhm.
issue.
Mhm. Now, you mentioned before about the nature of the clause in your contract that allows you to terminate based on the illegal or immoral actions of the creator. And most of the time, those are referred to as morals clauses, where they're
Yep.
set up so that if you do something, say something, or accused of something that is going to jeopardize or hurt the marketing or production of the book, then the publisher can pull back and terminate the deal. As a When I'm negotiating deals in my practice, I usually try to fight those clauses because they tend to be written in a way that is very vague and very broad, to the extent that someone could simply accuse you of something on Twitter and then the publisher can pull the book. So it's not a detailed legal allegation like we have in this case. It's just somebody put something on Twitter and the publisher goes, well,
Yeah.
now I'm pulling the book. So what I usually try to do is there's two types of termination clauses. There's cause and there's no cause. If you have a no cause termination clause in your contract, you don't necessarily need to articulate a objective reason to terminate the contract. You could just say we're terminating the contract and not say why. Now, this is a lot more open and a lot more vague, but it does give publishers more space to terminate without having to justify or explain what it is that they're doing or why it is that they're doing it. Um,
Yeah,
the
I was
other,
more worried about I was less worried about like sexual assault allegations than I was just finding out people are Nazis, right? And
Mhm.
just kind of off their rockers and mean and that sort of thing. So my clause, basically says not that you have to be accused of something that's illegal, but basically, I mean, it is vague, and it also says that the sole arbiter of what counts is me,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Exactly.
Arbiter, is that the right word? Arbiter?
Yeah,
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 I'm the
you
one that
got
gets
it.
to decide. So, but I do think, if somebody posted on social media that, they're, I don't know, whatever, like they they're offended by something,
Mhm.
right? And it's something that I agree in. Like that's pretty weak to say, like,
Mhm.
hey, you're offended by this thing, therefore I'm terminating your contract. I think if they sued me over that, they would likely win. Like it just wouldn't pass the sniff
Mhm.
test. But if you're online and you're spouting a bunch of white supremacist garbage, then yeah, I'm going to pull that contract. You're not publishing with us because I don't want that, and I don't want to put that out in the world, and I don't want to support somebody that does. And I
Well, that is one of the things that I wanted to specifically key in on is the idea that one of the benefits of making comics is that people are geographically dispersed. So they can be all over the world in doing anything and they can all work on your comic. The downside to that is a lot of times you may not know necessarily who or what your fellow creators are when they're not working on your comic. So what we try to talk about in comics experience when you're building a team is not to simply look at the portfolio of the potential creator or the credentials of the potential creator, but actually do some due diligence to determine what who it is that you're going to be working with and who it is you're going to be dealing with. Now, in a lot of cases, because things are geographically dispersed and you are not an online forensics investigator, you're a comic book creator, you may not be able to drill down and figure out every potential criminal allegation of everyone who's ever been on your team, but you can look at, you can do a Google search on this person. You can look at this person's social media. You can talk to or interact with the people that they've worked with before to determine if there is a potential problem. Now, again, you may not be able to uncover all the different things that a person might be accused of, like in the gaming situation. But to the point that you are speaking to, where political views do not align, you may be able to determine that before you sign the contract with them and then not sign the contract with them. But the other thing I'd like to point out is depending on what book you're making, who you are, who your potential readers are going to be, that kind of political alignment may work in your favor. So it may not help you in the books you're making if someone was a white supremacist, nationalist, whatever. But for some books, that's actually not a flaw, that's a feature. If that person has that kind of reputation among the people you're going to try to sell the book to, then you don't want to not sign him. In fact, you're actually more incentivized to sign him, but that's more of a marketing decision than it is a kind of the viability of the project. Does that nuance make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think that's part of the thing with Neil is that I mean, people want to work with Neil because he brings such a big audience with him, right?
Mm,
And now a lot of that audience, probably not all of it, but a lot of it feels betrayed or hurt or what have you. And so in the case of a place like Dark Horse, I think they're more keyed in on not driving those fans away and
mm,
saying, "Hey, we're pulling this book. We realize that damage is being done here to the fans as well as in other places, and so we're pulling back." So I think it makes sense. And yeah, I mean, I mean, there are some comics publishers out there that are like, "Hey, you've got a reputation with white supremacist groups, and that's a market we're looking to tap into." And like,
mm,
there are comics publishers out there that are doing that, and if that's what they want to do, then you know they're the ones that have to live with that. I don't.
mm, mm. Now, I guess the last question that I have is if you're in a situation where you're bringing in a new person, whether that's a colorist or an artist or even a writer, and you kind of look online to see where they are and you kind of reach out to different people and see where they're at. How concerned are you if you find nothing or almost nothing? Like they're a new person, so no one's ever worked with them before. They don't have social media or they don't have any prominent social media. It's just kind of there. And so you don't find anything negative, but you don't find anything at all. How concerned are you in that case to kind of move forward with that person on one of your creative teams?
That doesn't really concern me all that much because there's a number of different innocuous reasons why that might be the case.
Hmm.
So, if it's the first time I'm getting to work with somebody, like I'm going to try and get to know them a little bit,
Hmm.
before I just call them up and offer them a gig. So, hopefully I try and get to know them. I might even bring that up, like, hey, you don't have a big social media presence. Is that by design? Is that,
Hmm.
something happen or, whatever? And I try and get to the bottom of it because that is, that would relate to the marketing of the book,
Right.
so there's a natural business reason to get into it, which is like, hey, are you going to be able to help us market the book? Is that an expectation we should have or not? Um, Either answer is fine.
Mhm.
But it would be good to, I would try and get a little bit of insight into that, but that's probably, yeah, that wouldn't stop me from hiring anybody.
Okay. Okay. So, in conclusion, what we'd like to say is if you're publishing comics and creating comics with other people, you should try to know who you're working with and be prepared for potential fallout, even if you know that person, because of the nature of the business that we're in and the way the books are made. You don't know what your other creators are doing or not doing. So you have to kind of keep in the back of your head, problems may arise. Hopefully, they will not arise for you after you have two TV shows in the docket and one in the can, because that could be a problem later on. So until next time, I'm
I got one
Gamal.
thing. I got
Oh,
one
you got
thing.
one thing? You got one
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah. I just want to say, I think you agree with this, but I don't want to put words in your mouth that, these allegations with Neil are truly heinous, and that if there's any
Absolutely.
support that people need, they've suffered any violence, sexual or otherwise, themselves, there are places, and we would wish that you would seek help. A very good resource is called RAINN, RAINN, and it can be found at rainn.org. And they've got hotlines and all kinds of stuff, all kinds of resources to help you, help others, victims, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's worth putting that out.
Absolutely. We will link the contact information for RAINN also in the notes with the rest of the video. We will also put in the links for Comics Experience, where we actually are having more in-depth conversations about this specific topic in our Discord. So until next time, I'm Gamal, he's Andy, and have fun with your comics.